Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The section here on atonement is very important, and in the Bodhasara, section 16, subsection 14. So, in the process of offering oblations, this whole metaphor of the yajna, there is this whole thing on atonement, prayashchitta. And this prayashchitta for a student of Vedanta is very, very important. For a Vaidika, for a person who is following the Veda, of course it is important, because the Vedic tradition hinges upon one's own accountability. One's own accountability in terms of karma and in terms of one's own actions. And so actions that are contrary to dharma, that go against dharma, what happens to those actions? They incur some results of actions called papa that are not conducive to, or comfortable to in one's life. And so therefore the atonement has a very important place, because it is correcting that karma solely from the standpoint of karma phala for the Vaidika. But also behind it is a very important psychology of human growth that is easily missed if we look at it from the standpoint of just karma, action and results of action. Oh, I have done wrong things, and some bad thing will catch me, and so better go and offer a sari to the goddess in the temple. This is how many people approach this, and it's okay, because that is where that is how it is presented for the so that it is easy for people to understand. And then like sometimes when one has a puja in the house, there is some katha, there is a story afterwards that you sit and listen to after the puja. And even though you're hungry and you want lunch, the lunch is delayed because of this story katha. And of course there will be archetypes of those who are following dharma, and then Bhagavan is giving them nice things, and then sometimes they are being tested also, and those who are following adharma, and then they are having difficulties come to them. And as a child, having listened to so many versions of these stories, kathas, I would think, what kind of a strange thing this is. This is so basic, and this is so, what is in this? But then, when you look at it from the standpoint of the tradition, and how it is geared to bring about the emotional maturity of the person who is a seeker. First, one is a seeker of objects, and then slowly the point is to graduate from being the seeker of objects to being the seeker of oneself, the subject. And so, to this end, there is there is a trajectory of growth that is followed in the Shastra. So for the people who are not capable of, or don't have the time for inner reflection, this itself is good enough, that one is held accountable for one's actions, and one is given the opportunity to correct those actions for the sake, even for the sake of the results. It's okay, so one corrects those actions. So now, but there is a deeper reading possible. So this correction is not for the seeker of the truth of the self, for the seeker of moksha. This correction is not just for the sake of karma phala, the results of action. So the prayaschitta for the seeker of the truth of the self is not just for the sake of making sure that bad results of actions, karma, bad karma, papa doesn't come to me. That is not at that level. The prayaschitta does not operate on that level. The question is why? Well, the main reason is because the seeker of moksha, the seeker of Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of the self, has already identified and reminted oneself as a karma yogi. And what is the main condition? What is the main qualification of a karma yogi? The one that lets go of the results of action and accepts whatever comes as something that is coming from Bhagavan, as prasada, the one that is equipped with prasada buddhi. And so therefore that person who is a karma yogi, who is a seeker of knowledge, is not interested in milking some kind of grace of Bhagavan in order to go to heaven or have some kind of a comfortable existence. So that is one thing. The second thing, so that is the main reason why the mumukshu, the jignasu, the seeker of freedom, the seeker of knowledge, is not interested in prayaschitta as a surface level. Prayaschitta means atonement. Atonement is not a surface level kind of a thing for the mumukshu, for the jignasu, primarily because the person has already given up the quote-unquote connection to results of action. The person continues to perform action, but for the sake of self-growth. And so therefore, the actions connected to atonement also become for the sake of self-growth, not necessarily just for the sake of gaining something, including or warding off something that is unpleasant. So this is the here is where we have to read this prayaschitta differently as it applies to the mumukshu jignasu. So then prayaschitta as emotional growth is very, very beautiful, because we immediately see two things. Atonement. So why to atone? Because there is a genuine understanding that whatever I have done in this particular instance has been hurtful to another. And this understanding is without self-blame or blaming others. It is a fact. It is a fact that in the process of growing to how many ever years one is now, one would have done a lot, ridden roughshod over so many people's rights and privileges, and one would have tested the grace of Bhagavan, one would have walked all over the grace of Bhagavan, one would have tried the patience of everyone, starting with the mother and father, or the primary caregivers. And so therefore the atonement here is not just to say, oh, I'm so sorry I did that. That's only one part of the atonement, is the accountability. The other part of the atonement is to grow out of those behaviors and to grow out of that impetus and examine the roots of those behaviors that lead to those patterns. So this is a very big thing. So prayaschitta is basically addressing stubborn patterns within oneself, which make one transgress dharma, which make one afraid, which make one engage in actions that which one is not proud of. That is what has to be looked at. And so the prayaschitta for the jignasu mumukshu means not just sort of saying one blanket sorry for everything, for all the transgressions, but understanding that at the root of every transgression is an open, gaping wound. A wound, a hurt, and a hurt from a long time ago. That is behind all procrastination, that is behind not doing what needs to be done, that is behind doing that what one is not supposed to do, that is behind so many things. The root cause of everything is an open, unattended wound. And why is it unattended? Because only when you know it is there, you can attend. But that wound is an unknown wound. It's like where you have some kind of a cut, a paper cut or something, but you're not aware of it. So somewhere it seems to hurt, but you don't know where until it is discovered. Oh, it is on this finger, but then all the other fingers also start to hurt. And so like this, it is an open, gaping wound, which for good reasons Bhagavan has hidden that from oneself, primarily because one needs to grow up and accomplish things, whatever one needs to accomplish, etc. And so the child is not equipped to deal with this wound, and so the wound keeps festering and it is there. And so the atonement, so the whole concept of atonement gives a absolutely wonderful opportunity to look into the root cause of why is it that one keeps hurting oneself, which is called self-sabotage, and then one keeps hurting another through one's actions. And so this is, so this section that we are going to study must be looked at from the standpoint of an opportunity to heal old hurts. And so that is how we will see that. क्षमयैव जयेत् क्रोधं सत्येनैवानृतं जयेत् क्षमयैव जयेत् क्रोधं सत्येनैवानृतं जयेत् अश्रद्धां श्रद्धया जित्वा दानैः कृपणतां जयेत् अश्रद्धां श्रद्धया जित्वा दानैः कृपणतां जयेत्. So let us see this from the standpoint of what was just mentioned. So kshama literally means forgiveness, but here it is more of accommodation. Not just forgiveness, but accommodation. Kshamaya eva, through accommodation, jayet, may one be victorious over, may one have victory over what? Krodham. Krodha means anger. Very, very nice and beautiful. See, anger, is we think that we often think that the opposite of anger is to smile and do something, or pretend not to be angry. That doesn't work. Here, anger requires accommodation. Accommodation, the first step in accommodation is to acknowledge the fact that anger has come. It is here. And that's why in the comics, there is no doubt that the character is angry. Why? Because there will be fumes coming out of the ears, out of the head. And so then you can imagine that in oneself, these kinds of fumes coming out of the ears. One is smoking and one is ready to take any kind of thing at hand and treat it as a weapon, and one is in that kind of a state. So the first, what do you call it? The A for accommodation is to allow for the fact that anger has come. Because that's not what is usually done. One doesn't accommodate the anger. One gets, there are multiple emotions coming in the way, because as soon as anger comes, oh no, I should not be angry. There is an inner cop that comes and tries to thwart the anger, and the anger grows, And now you have to deal not only with the anger, but the inner whistleblower who is saying this anger is dangerous, stop it, stop it, stop it. Somehow it's uncomfortable in the body. You may say something bad or something, all these things. So there is a natural tendency to suppress the anger. And so that tendency is actually not helpful to accommodate the anger. So the first thing to do is to say, okay, here you are. And then, it's like suddenly you are just digging in the garden on a nice day to plant some vegetables, okay? Suddenly you had this idea. People suddenly get the feeling, oh, what am I doing? I need to plant some vegetables. So you go with your seeds and then you're happily planting the vegetables. But then, as you dig, you find something that looks suspicious, and then you actually handle it. It is a landmine from World War II. This is actually a story that came in the paper. Okay, I read it. So the landmine from World War II is in this child's hand. The child and the mother were planting the garden. And then quickly, what to do. Then they first retreated to the safety of the house. And the mother told herself, okay, let's not overreact here. It's been dormant for so many, decades. It's not going to go off right now. And then so saying, she calmed herself and the child down and then called the bomb squad. And the bomb squad came and told the people never to come out into the yard till they were done. And then what did they do? They put it in one box, then they put it in another box, then they put it in a third box, then they put it in these are all not just cardboard boxes that you get from Amazon. These are metal boxes, okay? So then they put it in 4 or 5 metal boxes, and then that they took it away. And then what did they do? They safely detonated it somewhere else. A controlled detonation which did not harm anybody, either the owners of the house or the neighbors. It did not blow up the yard. Okay? And that is exactly what to do with the anger. First you accommodate it. You say, all right, it is here. And then you safely take it somewhere to detonate without hurting yourself or another. And this is where all the psychology in the Bhagavad Gita that we have studied comes in handy, the Raga Dvesha psychology. Because we know that the cause of anger is pain. We know that from the Bhagavad Gita. And the pain of what? The pain of not getting to have one's way, one's object of desire. And here we have to extend this, because if somebody is angry because they did not get offered the last slice of the chocolate cake, the anger is not because of the last slice of the chocolate cake that went into somebody else's tummy. That's not why the anger is, even though it looks like the anger is centered on the chocolate cake. This anger is from the feeling of lack centered on the self from ages ago, which is re-stimulated like the discovery of the landmine in the garden where you are trying to plant some nice seeds. So here the Mumukshu Jignasu is planting some nice seeds of practicing compassion and loving kindness and all these things. And then suddenly the landmine of anger, which one did not even know exists, one is confronted with. So the source of the anger, no matter how convinced you are, is that it is centered on a present situation, object, person, etc., relationship, is actually triggered by something within you. That is the landmine. No matter, and it's very convincing. Of course it's not me. I have looked at myself this way, that way, every which way, and I am above reproach. And I am not, this is not me. This is clearly the other person. It is clearly because of this situation. It's clearly because of that relationship. It's clearly because this thing that should not be here is here. Like an unwelcome guest, so many things. Unwelcome guest is equal to pest. Okay, a small difference between the two. Okay, so then all these things, it is very easy to send, to transfer. This is what is called transference. It's a projection. It's an outward projection to on any kind of a fall guy that one can find. Whether it's an object, an event, a relationship, or a person, whatever it is. This is the problem. But really the root of the problem goes far, far, far back to that gaping wound of early childhood where one felt abandoned, neglected, for no fault of one's own. And so accommodating the anger means having the space to really fall back on oneself and to say, this has nothing to do with this situation. First thing is, yes, there is anger, acknowledge it. Take a few deep breaths. Second, Kshama here means accommodate the anger and say, even though I do not remember what the cause of this trigger is, that this trigger is there. This trigger is there. This trigger shall be overcome. If not today, tomorrow, or another time, whenever it is. This trigger shall be overcome. That is accommodation. And then one safely takes this bomb and explodes it in a controlled situation somewhere else, where it is safe. So where is it safe? For example, in a situation of therapy, it is safe. Because the therapist is trained not to take on your anger or not to be offended by your anger. Or, if therapy is not, that is not what is going on right now. There are other ways, to safely deal with the anger. Go to an ashram. Why? Because usually there is open spaces where you can yell it out, scream it out, and nobody cares. So, or go to some park, meadow, forest, hiking, etc. These are all safe ways where you can fret and fume and let the anger explode safely, without hurting yourself or another. This is very, very important. Or if we are talking of deforestation and the ecology in your surroundings, your area doesn't have such kinds of spaces, go to a room. Go to any room and fume it out, fret it out. In the olden times, especially in rich people's homes and mansions and palaces, there was such a thing called the anger room, Kopa Bhavanam. We find this, excuse me, we find this in the Ramayana, Kopa Bhavanam. 1 minute, Mother Kaikeyi is selecting which sari she is going to wear for Rama's coronation. Rama is her beloved son. Stepson, but nonetheless she had forgotten the word step completely. She was in love with Rama. She was in step with all the people of Ayodhya who delighted in Rama, and she was so thrilled that her son is this is a special occasion. I should wear the best sari, I should wear the best jewelry. And the next minute, that is how the anger comes. You see, in 1 minute one is absolutely delighted, absolutely at peace, absolutely happy, so to speak, ecstatic. And the next minute what happens to Kaikeyi is what happens to everyone. And what is that happened? She was fuming and raging and had to be dragged to the Kopa Bhavanam. Kopa Bhavanam is an anger management room, and from the Ramayana we hear that it was made of some kind of a glass-like, some kind of a transparent glass. so that the person would be enclosed, contained. The angry person would be contained, the person's anger, until it was divested from the person is contained, and then they could jump, they could scream, they could hit the wall, all these things. But it was made of transparent material so that they could be rescued if they started to harm themselves. What happened to Kaikeyi? It is anybody's guess. We don't know much about Kaikeyi's childhood. If we knew, then we would say that 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 the seeds of this trauma are within can be found within that early childhood of not getting what she wanted, always acquiescing to someone other than herself, always feeling that she was bypassed for other people's wishes and desires. It's very clear. So Kaikeyi here is an archetype of what we are talking about. So 1 minute she is just, that trigger has not yet hit, and she is selecting the dresses, and then Dasharatha, the father of Rama, comes into her room, and then she asks him to select the sari, and she says, is this okay, is this nice, and I want to do the best, I want to look the best, it is my beloved son's coronation. And as soon after he has left the room, something happens to her. Of course, in the story, there is a nanny, Kaikeyi's childhood nanny, that came along with her after marriage. So by now she is old. She is a elderly lady called Manthara. And in the story, Manthara starts to foment this anger, saying that how come you are dressing up so nicely when really speaking you should be upset. It is not your son Bharata who is getting coronated, it is actually your stepson. What about your son's right? So this ahanta means I-ness, myness, mamata, all these things come into the picture because of Manthara. And in the Ramayana, the elderly lady Manthara gets a bad reputation. They say, oh, Kaikeyi was wrong, yes, in listening to her, but Manthara was the one who was the troublemaker. And now we know, thanks to psychology, we know that Manthara was just something that triggered that was already there. If Kaikeyi was at peace with herself, she would have just given Manthara a big hug and said something to the effect of, well, it's awfully nice of you to be protective towards me. You have always been like a second mother. I appreciate that, but that's not happening right now. We are not going to fight for our rights because our rights are already here. She would have been a secure person, but her own insecurity is what was activated by Manthara. And so this, so basically Manthara's insecurity and Kaikeyi's insecurity did a little cha-cha-cha dance here, and then they kind of, fomented one another. And so so therefore, Kopa Bhavanam, that is why Kaikeyi came into the picture. So the anger was safely detonated. So in the Kopa Bhavanam, what did she do? She jumped up and down. And her elaborately done, coiffed hair, she pulled all the golden pins and the, all the gems and jewels, everything, and like a mad woman. And she was running around in this anger room with disheveled hair. And she tore the sari that she was wearing. And she tore it, which is a big no-no. So everything that was a no-no she did. And so she was acting out, but in a safe space. So that is what one has to do when the inner Kaikeyi is unleashed for one. One needs to create a safe space. One has to have a instantly convertible anger management room in every house. Just like one has puja room, puja closet, anger management room is very important, where you can safely do a few things. And then, And Pujya Swamiji recommended this because what he would say is take a wet towel and then beat it on the floor, because it makes a very satisfying noise when a wet towel is beaten on the floor, because then you can imagine lying on the floor whatever that object of your anger is, and then then safely detonate that anger. And very soon, a wet bath towel is very heavy, and so very soon your arms will be tired. Even if you've been working out, your arms will get tired, and then you'll throw the towel in disgust, and then you'll be heaving up and down, and you'll be out of breath, and then you will smile at yourself. Safely it has been detonated. Another way, a very important way, is to write it out. Write it out. Write out whatever is happening, and here you don't have to be all Vedantically correct. What is Vedantically correct? Politically correct, but from the standpoint of Vedanta. You don't have to go all, goody two shoes and say something is triggering me. Don't worry about all that. Just say, this idiot has caused me to have a bad day. Write it out. Keep on writing, writing, writing. And sometimes the writing is difficult because one censors oneself. So write it with the non-dominant hand. If you are a right-hander, then write it with the left hand. Very interesting things come out. So the inner child likes the non-dominant hand sometimes. Write it out. And then, so that is another way of safe detonation. Scream it out if it is safe, if you can find an open space without alarming someone or making them call 911 on your behalf, or knock on the door at this most inappropriate moment to conduct a welfare check. So don't do that if you're living in a flat or in in a city. So therefore, the wet towel is nice. At the most, the people upstairs, downstairs can think that you are doing a home renovation project. So you can fool them like that. So write it out, talk it out, and somehow it is safely, this is what is called Shama, the safe detonation. The safe detonation of this explosive anger. And so then after it has been safely detonated, then you can go to the business of understanding that there is a deep hurt. And that hurt is, this is the second level of accommodation. The first level of accommodation is acknowledging, yes, there is anger. The second level of accommodation is after that anger has been safely dealt with without hurting yourself or another. The second level of accommodation is to understand that there is some deep pain that I have not been aware of, that I have suppressed, that I have run away from, that I have badly neglected. And that is that confrontation, that honest confrontation with the seed of the hurt is the second level of accommodation. But one may say, I don't know the trigger. Doesn't matter. That there is a trigger is 3/4 of the battle won. And then you can now become the Sherlock Holmes of your antahkarana. You have a little magnifying glass and you say, oh, let us see. You become a scientist. Oh, let us see. So today the anger was triggered by chocolate cake. Let us see when it comes next time. Oh, that's interesting. So the next time also it had to do with a food item. Aha, interesting. See, now the detective, now you are an accomplice of Ishvara, because you are going into into this from the standpoint of healing this anger, this hurt. And so therefore, next time also when I was angry, it had to do with a food item. By the way, 10 years also ago, it happened the same way. So there is some hurt with regard to food. And so how does that inform my eating habits, for example? So if there is hurt regarding food, was there enough food? This is something you can answer from your own background. was perhaps, did you feel that some other child was favored more than you? These are all things to really, really look at. Or were meal times in the house extremely chaotic because of certain things? These are all things to look at. Because the parents were fighting perhaps. And so there was some insecurity while eating. So this is just an example. It could be around, the anger could be around a thing, around food, around anything. Since we talked about chocolate cake, I just extrapolated on this. But you can look at this. This is the second level of kshama. And then, if you think we are done, I hate to disappoint, but because there is one more level of kshama, accommodation. So having addressed one's own hurts, or even in the process of addressing one's own triggers from where this anger comes, then the next step is to see that whenever anyone else is angry towards you, they too must be going through that same process. This is called pratipaksha bhavana, stepping into the shoes of another. This doesn't mean you take on their anger. Nowhere it is stated. Just like you are now equipped as a result of this section to look at your own anger with love, with accommodation. And then the next step, to look at the trigger of your anger with accommodation. Yes, this parentage happened. There's nothing we can do about it now, except we cannot change the parents, we can change ourselves. That is the understanding. And that change comes from self-love, loving oneself, loving the cause of the anger. And this is what is called accommodation. So these two-step accommodation with which we are treating oneself, can we extend it to another? First we start within the family, to a significant other. Or if you are living in an ashram, to another person who is also in the ashram. Can we extend this accommodation, this loving kindness to the anger of another? That doesn't mean putting up with, everything. That doesn't mean becoming a doormat. That doesn't mean not having healthy boundaries. But what it means is to see that there is great pain. You are not responsible for that pain. But to see that there is pain is the first level of accommodation with regard to the other person's anger. And then you can also see beyond that anger and say, perhaps something happened. And if you don't know what happened in your own childhood, how will you know what has happened in the childhood of another? It is none of your business. What is your only business here is to see that there is some hurt that is coming in the way for them. So you accommodate. Previously, what would you have done? You would have told them a few things. You would have told them off. What rubbish! And then you could have if it's a significant other or somebody, you would have even said, you had a very cushy childhood, don't give me this childhood rubbish. It's all nonsense. You had a fine childhood. I know your parents, they are very loving, and then so don't do this. This is not helpful. This is just a reiteration of your own pain. This is not accommodation. Accommodation means, yes, they are acting like this because there is pain. Why? Because it's a psychological fact that when one acts, the behavior of an angry person is similar regardless of nation, community, class. It just eats up all other divisions. Here we have, here we have Advaita in a sense, because when one is one with one's anger, it looks the same no matter who that person is, no matter what their age, no matter what their nationality, gender, nothing. It looks the same. Very interesting. And so therefore, you are not trying to heal their anger. You are only trying to accommodate that anger for two reasons. One is because it is a nice thing to do, and because it's the right thing to do, and because you don't want your anger to be re-triggered. You are doing such good work with your own anger. You don't want it to be re-triggered. You don't want it to come out again. And so you give back their anger to them. You don't take it in and then start having all kinds of upset as a result of that. Because with great difficulty, you are learning to calm down your own upset. And you don't want to let another person give the other person the privilege of upsetting you. So what to do? Only one thing to do. Accommodate them. You don't have to accommodate their behavior. Accommodate the person. Just say, yes, there must be some trigger. I don't know what that is, but obviously there is some trigger here. Accommodate the person. And then this is what it says, Kshamaya eva, only by accommodation. Jayet, may one be victorious over what? Krodham, anger. And anger, it's not specified whether it's your own or that of another. So both have to be discussed. Both are included. Because when you encounter an angry person, unpleasant feelings are invoked within oneself. And why? It's just like that. You know, Kaikeyi encountered an angry Manthara and immediately became angry. Anger begets anger because it's a trigger. It triggers all that raw wound starts to bleed again, afresh. So therefore, accommodating the person that is angry, at the same time having healthy boundaries. Just, you can just tell yourself, tell the other person, I appreciate the fact that you're angry. I can see that you're angry, but I do not appreciate that you're targeting me as a result. Let's discuss this when you're not angry. That is one more thing here, is to not make decisions or have any kind of discussion when the anger is there. Put it off. Oh, generally you don't tell us to put it off. Yeah, this time I'm telling you to put it off. Procrastinate on making any kind of decisions or discussions. No decisions, no discussions. Because when one is angry, many times one feels like jumping off a cliff. But one, thankfully, most of the time doesn't do that. It's a dangerous time to make any decisions while the detonation is happening. So defer the decisions. Along with the decisions, one more thing to defer is all discussion. We need to talk it out right now. That urgency, that vega has to be just, has to be stopped. And how to do that? Because sometimes I don't even know that I'm angry. That's why we recommend getting married, because very soon you will know what it is like to be angry. Okay, so we recommend grihastha so that there is a whole family to tell you that you are angry. All you need is a couple of teenagers. Mom, you look like you're fuming at the mouth. You're foaming at the mouth and fuming out of the ears. And make it a family pact. Let us not discuss these things when we are angry. And I give you the right to tell me when I am angry, and I also have the right to tell you when you're angry. And so the last thing an angry person wants is for someone else to tell them that they are angry, because more anger comes. But here you have made a pact. So this will help to grow as a family. So everybody becomes a Vedantin eventually, slowly, bit by bit. Bit by bit, whatever is unpleasant, you do bit by bit. Bit by bit you take care of the anger, you detonate it safely. Bit by bit you accommodate and acknowledge the anger. Bit by bit you give it some safe outlet. Bit by bit you grow to understand the triggers of this anger. Bit by bit you are able to grow enough to accommodate the pain and the anger of another without needing to lift a finger to help it. No. Bit by bit you become stronger in your boundaries, and bit by bit you grow in self-love. Self-love is the beginning of loving everything, because the self happens to be, the truth of the self happens to be everything. Then, so this is what kshamaya eva jayet krodham. And then the second one is also important. Satyena eva anritam jayet. Conquer falsehood by truth. And again, it has a surface level meaning. Like the Veda says, Satyam vada dharmanchara. So, speak the truth always, here on the level of Satya Bhashanam, speaking the truth. So this seems to be a straightforward thing, when you look at it. But again, the human mind is extremely complex, and one has grown up lying to oneself. Forget other people. One has grown up lying to oneself, like a kitten drinking milk with its eyes closed. In India, it happens all the time. So, it comes through the kitchen window. And then a boiled, pan of milk is there being cooled with the cream on top. The kitten looks to the left, looks to the right, and then puts a paw in the milk to see which. It's a clever kitten. Okay, so it wants to see how hot is it. If it's too hot, it will take it out. But if it is warm, jackpot. Okay, then it will just wipe off. Kittens are very clean, so it will wipe off that paw nicely, clean the paw, and then slowly make its way towards the milk. And then even before it tastes the milk, what it does, it closes the eyes, because it thinks that if I have closed my eyes and I am drinking the milk, it is not really stealing. Why? Because no one is looking. No one is looking. And then many people I have seen in India, this Bhuta Yajna is big, feeding all animals and, starting with a rangoli in front of the house made of rice flour for all the cockroaches, etc. This was the ancient form of pest control. You belong outside, your food is outside. Please have your lunch out today and don't come in. That was the idea. So then, it is so beautiful. So these practices. So I would find that, in whichever house I went, in whether it was rural areas, urban areas, I would find that people would generally leave a small saucer of milk out for the kitten, so that it doesn't have to spoil this big, pan of milk. And then even if that saucer is left out for this particular kitten who is expected, it would still close its eyes and sip from the saucer. So this is, akin. So it's not that one is lying to oneself. Why will one lie to oneself? For that matter, why will one lie to another? It takes a lot of effort to tell a lie, because you have to hide so many things. It takes so much effort to tell one lie, because you have to make sure that that lie cannot be corroborated. So much Rama, oh my God, so if you say, if you say, oh, I had breakfast with so and so, some celebrity, and and then you want to make sure that you know where that celebrity was that day, and you want to make sure that nobody else can find out that this was the case. So to tell a lie is not easy, even though we say people are lying so easily. They're not lying easily. What makes it supposedly easy is that it becomes a habit. So the first lie that one tells oneself is about oneself. It is not called a lie, it is called self-denial. It is called being in denial. This is often not discussed, but it's an important form of subjectivity. Usually we see the veneer of subjectivity as something that is projected, like an eclipse. Here there is, the projection, so we don't see normally what is behind the projection. Behind the projection here is a denial of what is, and setting up therefore of a parallel reality of what isn't, and trying to embroider the edges of that curtain, that veil, to make it look like that is what it is, when it isn't. And it starts in childhood, in early childhood. For example, a child from from a home that is very chaotic might tell itself and its friends, I come from a very happy home. It may not be able to say happy home. Oh, my parents are wonderful. I love going to school. Actually, the child hates going to KG. Why? Because it doesn't even weigh a kg yet, and it wants to stay at home. That's why it's called KG. And then there is also pre-KG in India. So then all this, the child is not interested. It wants to be with the mother and the father, the primary caregivers, the source of its connection and strength. But then it will pretend to like the school in order to keep itself and the parents happy. So this pretense starts young, and this pretense is based on self-denial. And this is what is called Satyenaiva Anritam Jayet. Look for the pockets of self-denial, and then that same kshama which came earlier has to be applied here. Accommodate the circumstances which made you tell yourself all these untruths just in order to survive. Have a heart for that small baby, aka the baby version of yourself that was so innovative in order to survive difficult situations and circumstances. Very, very nice. And then look at now comes the hard part. Look at all the situations which are frightening enough for you to concoct some kind of an untruth, because one is just rehearsing the childhood patterns of trying to get out of what appears to be a dangerous situation. Then tell yourself, after acknowledging this is also the second level of kshama applied to the question of living in truth. Then tell yourself that there were very mitigating circumstances which led you to do that, which are still leading you to do that. And then tell yourself one small mantra which you can write it out. You can write down this mantra, I am not in any danger now. Very, very important. This situation is not dangerous. Nobody is out to get me. And even if they are, I am not a baby, I am an adult. I have so many tools, resources, people, situations that I can consult. I am not daunted by this situation. So just write that somewhere and look at it every time you feel like you are in trouble. I am not in any danger. I know that I am not in any danger. I have Bhagavan on my side. I am finding out new things about myself every day and living more and more freely. This is, this is a very important thing, because nobody really wants to lie. Because it takes, as I said, a lot of effort. So the lie happens. One lies due to helplessness. One lies due to fear. One lies to defend oneself from a dangerous situation, real or perceived, mostly perceived. One lies to protect a person or a thing that could be dangerous if it is not protected. This is what the thing is. And it starts in childhood. Children by nature are honest, but the unconscious, when it forms, it necessarily puts one in a form of self-denial. The next exercise is again an exercise in a personal honesty. Go about the day and make a list of how many times you are speaking something that is not true. Just to count the speaking. Satya Bhashanam. Or it is a little, it may be true, but it is a little flubbed. Or it may be true, but it is a very selective truth. Or it may be true, but it is, you're not telling the whole story. Make a list. And then again, look at that list with compassion. Because doesn't matter how many entries there are there, that just shows how many times you felt under threat in the course of one day. Have love and compassion to yourself. This is very, very important. And then when you make a list like this, then that awareness comes each time you're not acting out of truth, speaking the truth. Each time there is something that is, that awareness is activated. And naturally, the next day, the number will be halved. And then very soon, a day will come, very, very soon, a day will come where you don't need to embroider anything. You don't need to hide anything. Of course, hiding means if somebody has told you something in confidence, that's not being talked about here. You don't need to flub up a situation. You don't need to protect anybody. Na kaschit gopaitum ichhati. It is said of the Jnani. The Jnani doesn't require to protect anything. So what you see is what you get in a Vedantin. And one grows to that. And these two practices are very enough, are enough to bring one very close to assimilating Advaita, the truth of the self. You know why? Because these two situations, whether it is anger or whether it is living a lie, living a form of denial, both of those situations talk of a inner split. So when you tell a lie, there is a split between the knower, the jnata, the pramata, the knower, and the karta, the doer. Why? Because the jnata, the pramata, knows that this is not true. The pramata knows what is the truth. But then the karta has lied. Through the vak, of course, or through action. So the karta and the pramata are split into two. How will Vedanta enter into such a antahkarana with this kind of a division? So the relative healing of the divisions is very, very important in order to be relatively whole until one can assimilate the truth that one is absolutely whole, free, limitless. And so that is why, and same thing, if there is festering anger, Vedanta will just go out the head. There is no room. So, inviting Vedanta, inviting Ishvara into one's life as the truth of oneself, is to make room, is to have an antahkarana that is consistent, where the karta, pramata, all of them, manta, thinker, actor, doer, are all aligned. This is what is called Riju Bhavaha, Arjavam, which is described in the Bhagavad Gita, the alignment between the thinker, the one who has made the sankalpa, the one who is who is acting through words, the thinker, the speaker, and the doer, the actor. What I have in my mind, I say, as I say, I do. This is the alignment. Arjavam, a very important pre-qualification, prerequisite for the study of Vedanta. More we'll see next time. I think it is on August 15th, if I am correct. Yes? Can somebody confirm that? Yes? Will this class meet again on August 15th?
Yes, Swami.
Yeah. So, August 15th, Pujya Swamiji's birthday. What a wonderful day
Yeah.
to celebrate.
Yeah.
ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ